Let's turn to this major story in tech today. Alphabet shares jumping after a judge ruled that Google will not be forced to divest its Chrome browser. It's a major antitrust win for the tech company and for big tech. Implications reaching beyond just Alphabet. Our Mackenzie Sagalos and Steve Kovac help us cover every angle in today's Tech Check. Max, kick us off.
So here in Silicon Valley, Carl, the takeaway is clear. Google keeps its moat. No divestiture of Chrome and Android, and it can still pay Apple billions to remain the default browser, keeping its distribution muscle intact, while also positioning Google to maintain its edge in the AI wars. So the data sharing remedy, that is a concession, but even that doesn't expose its secret sauce. A former Google exec I spoke with says that it locks in the company's current ecosystem across search, its browser, and operating system. And retaining Chrome is especially key to its AI strategy, since browsers are the launchpad for Gen AI agents, which is part of why OpenAI has explored building its own. Now, the case itself predated ChatGPT, but the judge said that the rise of those new Gen AI rivals really swayed the outcome here. Now, as for what it means for the fate of the AI race, the CEO of an AI startup put it bluntly. The M&A pipeline is open again, so expect more sub-$1 billion startup acquisitions and fewer unicorns built from scratch. And those AI talent wars, they're going to remain white hot, but smaller firms without cash or investor appetite will struggle to retain people. Meanwhile, the giants, OpenAI, Anthropic, they will keep running secondary share sales, giving employees liquidity. OpenAI, they are doing exactly that this week at a $500 billion valuation. And the effect from what I'm hearing is that it could narrow the field for everyone else, Carl.
Max, stick around. We want to get more from you, although we want to bring in Steve into the conversation as well and talk about Apple and, of course, the huge implications for default search.
Yeah, just huge here. And this is a big win, Carl, for Apple, because about 20% of its services revenue, that's $100 billion a year business, comes from this contract with Google. Those Google payments up to $20 billion a year, maybe even more depending on the usage. But this also gives Apple a kind of a reprieve from having to either build its own search engine or, as we get into AI search more and more, rely on just regular Google search. This actually gives them more leverage now, Carl, to negotiate, because this ruling says every year, Google and Apple have to come to the table and figure out what they want to do. And as AI comes up and starts taking share away from Google, this also gives Apple a negotiating leverage saying, hey, if you want access to our 1 billion iPhone users, you're going to have to start competing better with these Anthropic, OpenAI. And as we know, Carl, Apple is considering partnering with one of those to power that new Siri search engine. So this gives Apple a lot more leverage, not only just to continue to collect those payments, but as search evolves and changes into a more AI-centric paradigm, they get to have more leverage and potentially reach outside of Google to have more beneficial AI products, rather, on their platform, Carl.
I mean, has that been an overhang on the stock, Steve? Was that an issue for investors?
Which part?
Their ability to do that.
Yeah, well, first of all, we know they haven't even really wanted to go out there and acquire one of these companies. This kind of takes out, I'll quote what Eric Woodring over at Morgan Stanley wrote in his note this morning, Sarah. He said this kind of takes out of the conversation Apple needing to buy Perplexity because it now has this leverage, because it can keep that Google relationship in search and potentially look beyond others. They can still negotiate with Perplexity. Maybe Perplexity 1 year in the near future will have a better idea how to do AI search than Google already does. So Apple is really in the hot seat here, and it's the most valuable platform. 1 billion iPhone users. We know they're more wealthy than Android users, even though they don't have the market share that Android does. They have the money share that Android does not. And so this is really great for Apple, and it really takes the pressure off them, Sarah, to have to build this themselves.
Yeah, Mac, and I wonder just what's on the line for Alphabet to keep that seat. We always talk about, in NFL rights, right, sports rights, getting outbid by the deep-pocketed tech companies. But in this case, Google's got some stuff on the line to defend that position.
Well, in part because Google is the best at monetization. And so you look at places where choice screen has been implemented in the EU, for example, and they still have retained around 90% share of the search market, even when you leave it in the hands of consumers, because it's just a better user experience. So they certainly have that going for them. And then to Steve's point about perplexity, that keeps coming up in every single conversation I'm having out here, that, you know, out in Silicon Valley, it's really these large language models that are the dominant players, but something like a Perplexity that's a wrapper that builds on top of these LLMs, the long-term viability here is really in question. And even though they might benefit from the upside of this data sharing agreement, if that's pushed out, it might be irrelevant in a few years from now when they would get access to it.
Mackenzie Sigalo, Steve Kovac, huge stories, big implications for all of tech. Thanks, guys.